outpatient and inpatient programs at Jewish hospitals. Well, I won't say them. Okay. And Professor will be speaking regarding the Zen Brain. Thank you.
First, thank you very much for inviting me here today, and also to say that I was teaching at Washington University. I'm very happy to say that I am now retired a couple of years ago, so no more paper grading, and so this is good. Well, I'm going to fix my slides here so I can... I'm also very happy to see many of my friends here today. I remember going to prison, jailing. That was very enjoyable. Also getting out of prison, very enjoyable. And I remember all of our good times together at Washington University when the one guy from she was studying there. And also I remember when Rosan and I were younger men. In earlier days, when he first came to St. Louis and needed a space to practice Zen. So many of my good friends here. I want to talk a little bit about Zen Brain. I was recently in Upaya Zen Center in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where we spent 4 days together. Upaya is one of the really well-known Zen centers around the country because of Roshi Joan Halifax, very, very well-known person in the Buddhist community. She's written many books, and she brings together people from all different walks of life, and at this particular retreat, she brought together 5 of the very best neuroscientists who were doing research on the brain. So I'm not going to go into very much detail because we had 5 hours of presentation every day and 5 hours of meditation every day. It was a 14-hour day, started in early morning and went until 9 o'clock at night. So I really just want to share a few of my own thoughts about these kinds of things and connect it directly to our Buddhist practice. So the first question is how do we see this table? Actually, in fact, we don't really see the table. I don't want to cause any distress here or any suffering, but we're not seeing the table because what we actually see is light rays or photons bouncing off the table into our eyes. And then this gets transmitted through a series of changes that go on. The retina in the eyes takes this and puts this into the form of electrical messages that go along the optic nerve, through the optic chiasm, through the lateral nuclei, through the optic radiations, to the occipital region of the brain, where we end up with a picture, a mental representation of the table. So when we get this mental representation of the table, we see that the brain has actually interpreted many times over, and actually there are parts of the brain that actually put this object that we have seen, the light rays from this object, back out into space. There's a particular part of the brain, the pulvinar, which is located in the thalamus, that actually is responsible, along with other portions of the brain, for making sure that the orientation of this mental representation actually corresponds with other senses that we have. And it's quite a complex process. But we just for convenience sake, we just see this as a table. But in fact, things would be different if we actually had different sense organs. But we can, for our purposes, see that there are different parts of what it is that's going on. One part of the brain that tells us what the object is, and another part of the brain that tells us where the object is. So this is something that the brain is constantly doing, and our consciousness just takes this for granted. When we see the table, a mental representation of the table is formed in the occipital lobe, then this information is relayed to the portions of the brain that have to do with memory. The hippocampus is very involved in this. Also, this information is sent to reasoning processes of the brain, maybe on the left side where our speech is, where we have similarities and dissimilarities of the brain that decipher how is this table different than other tables. And then that information eventually gets to the prefrontal area. And that information then I can say, well, I can put my computer on this table. So that happens very fast, very fast. Now, I'm reminded of a particular story that when I was invited to go and visit and see the Dalai Lama in California last year. When I arrived, one of the things that I wanted to do was to go and visit the place where he was going to be speaking. And so I started with my son. We were walking, going there, and the day before, and I ran into a monastic. And I like monastics very much. And so I started talking with her, and she was from Alaska. And we started walking together towards the place where they were going to have the talk the next day. And as we were walking along, there was a lady standing on the street pointing and talking rather loudly in Spanish. Now, I don't speak Spanish, but my son does. And he says, she's saying that there's a man on the ground. And we look and we see that there's a person who has fallen. Now, in the moment that it took me to think about what it was that I was going to do, I turned and I saw that the monastic was running full speed towards the man. She was already halfway there. So my mind had to hesitate and think, what should I do? But her training, no hesitation, she ran directly towards the fellow. So I, of course, ran after we arrived there. She got there before I did. Even with her robes and everything, she got there before I did. This was very humbling. I realized there's a very big difference between a person who is trained and a person who is just trying to be trained a little bit as a layperson. There's a difference. This really was very, very meaningful to me. I won't forget it. What happens for us when we think is that we have an arising of a thought, and then we have a sustained portion of discriminative thinking, and then this thought eventually ceases. Most of the time, for the untrained mind, we very much get caught up in the importance of the content of our thought process, not realizing that